2022 has certainly been a year full of great video games. I would say that on every platform there were great experiences to be made for all kinds of players. I personally didn't have a single minute of boredom, thanks to all of the great games that came out this year. And as gaming YouTubers usually do, I have decided to gather a little list of games that I have played and finished this year. So this video shows you my personal top 5 games in 2022. This list will probably be different from your favorite games, and if your most liked title isn't mentioned, I'm really sorry, but that's what the comment section is for. So we can share our memories in there and talk about what we enjoyed the most this year. Or you can just tell me my taste in games is garbage or that I have once again mispronounced something, the usual stuff. Speaking of disappointment, I also want to talk about one game that I was extremely excited for basically since it was announced years ago, but that really let me down in the end. But now we hop into the main topic of the video and talk about number 5, Rune Factory 5. I've been a fan of the series since all the way back on the Nintendo DS. I loved Rune Factory on the Nintendo Wii, but I despised whatever kind of crap they released on PS3 with Rune Factory Oceans. So when they announced Rune Factory 5 in 2019, I was overcome with joy. Many players probably don't know this, but back in 2013, Rune Factory developer Neverland became bankrupt, so we kinda thought we would never get another entry in the series. But Marvelous hired former Rune Factory developers, and then the series producer Yoshifumi Hashimoto opened up a new studio within Marvelous called Hakama. They went on to work on Rune Factory 4 Special, a port of the classic 3DS game, and also Rune Factory 5. It was eventually released in Japan in May 2021 and finally saw release in the West in March 2022. The interesting thing here was that apparently Western publisher Marvelous and Exceed made it possible to have same-sex marriages in the Western version of the game, and this was also later patched into the Japanese version. The game was met with some criticism though, because on the Nintendo Switch it didn't perform that well, even though it wasn't the most beautiful game either. The PC version, which was released just a few months later, did run better. I personally did buy the game on release for the Switch, and honestly it came at a perfect time for me. See, in March this year I somehow came into contact with some kind of poisoned food and contracted hepatitis E. We still have no idea how it happened, but well, I had to go to the hospital for a little bit. Thankfully I had my Switch with me and was able to play Rune Factory 5 basically as much as possible while I was in there. It helped me get through the days and I enjoyed playing it a lot. I personally didn't mind the FPS slowdowns or the janky controls, I was just glad to finally play a new Rune Factory game. Then when I met Ludmilla, I knew right then and there this game is amazing. She is my most favorite Rune Factory character of all time, simply because, well, I kinda love crazy characters. Now, after I finished the story and tried doing the endgame content, I met a wall because of how much you now had to grind for endgame equipment, and I stopped playing. I do plan on getting back into it soon though, because I have not even married Ludmilla yet, and it breaks my heart to know she's just sitting there in my save file waiting for me, probably crying. One thing I was a little bit mad about were the costumes that you could only get in either the Digital Deluxe edition of the game or the Special Retail edition. The game itself doesn't offer that many interesting costumes, so I might have bought them, but I didn't get a special edition and I wanted a retail version. You can't buy them in the eShop separately, and that sucks. There is some other DLC for the game, but it's either color swap swimsuits or at least some costumes of older characters from the series available separately. Not a big problem, but it's still kinda annoying. Overall, if you don't mind the jank graphics, longer loading times on the Switch, and clanky controls in combat, I do recommend Rune Factory 5 to people who enjoy farming sims, but that also want to do some fighting. And if you end up enjoying it, you will probably also enjoy the upcoming Rune Factory 3 Special Edition. It's a remaster of the original DS game with new content, which will bring a higher difficulty mode and more adventures with your chosen marriage partner. This game is definitely a contender for one of my most wanted games in 2023, but that's a topic for a different video. Next up, number 4, Star Ocean: The Divine Force. I cannot tell you just how much joy it brought to me when a new entry in the Star Ocean series was announced. The fifth game in the series, Integrity and Faithlessness, should have honestly just been called No Integrity at All and Hopelessness, because it was just not good at all. At least it brought us Fiore. But I honestly thought this would be it for the series, especially after the mobile game Star Ocean Anamnesis was shut down a while ago too. It also was one of my favorite mobile games ever, but Square Enix loves to kill every mobile game after just 1 year that's not called Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Anyway, besides the point, I instantly got the Divine Force right on release and I fell in love with it. In the newest entry of the franchise, you can select one of the two main characters, Raymond and Leticia. It doesn't change much about the game itself, but you do see certain events only with one character, while you experience what happens with the others if you choose the other route. I personally went with Leticia's side, because I found Raymond's character design incredibly boring. I still do, to be honest. After finishing the game, I do really like him, and all of the characters actually. But I initially found him just extremely boring looking. Speaking of boring, Star Ocean: The Divine Force starts in a pretty classic JRPG kind of way. Two kingdoms are at each other's throat, the princess tries to save everything, and some random dude, in this case from outer space, helps them out. I liked the events on Leticia's home planet, but it was nothing that special, dragged on for a little bit too long. But once the story developed into space, that's where it got extremely interesting and brought us some super interesting thoughts on organic and non-organic life forms. When it comes to the gameplay, it's very fun to traverse the world with Duma, and the combat is fast-paced. But the AP system is a bit annoying at times. See, to attack you need AP. You gain AP by doing some mechanics with Duma in fights, and if you get hit, you lose those AP. Now on some bosses, you can rarely do the mechanic needed to get more AP, which means you end up not being able to attack much and getting pushed around. There are some kind of solutions to this problem, but it took me until literally the endgame dungeons to finally notice them, because I'm an idiot. The game sadly suffers from some quality of life problems that could easily be fixed. Your inventory is full of duplicates from items, just stack them on each other and let me select the different versions from there. Or every time when your party members leave because of story reasons, you have to re-equip the accessories when they return. You also can't unlock several nodes on the skill board at once, which is a bit annoying when you unlock a new character. But those are in the end nothing more than small problems that don't affect how much I love this game. Also, between me writing this and the video's release, Square Enix has actually addressed the thing with the accessories, I will never learn how to pronounce this, in a patch, along with other nice changes like Nina healing more or being able to use Duma's scanning ability while moving. This certainly gives hope that the developers will keep improving the game, because I enjoy how the game looks, how it plays, and I certainly love the characters. I would love to replay the other route that I haven't seen yet. But the game does not offer a New Game Plus experience where I can just blast through the game once again on the other route. I do hope we get this patched in at some point in the future. One very interesting thing that I've noticed, by the way, and sorry for anyone who is not a degenerate like me, but I kinda have to mention this because it's really interesting. The game features some very well done jiggle physics on female characters, but not on Nina. Very often, certain games don't really care how old a character is and just let their bobberinos flop all over the place. But Nina has no jiggle physics at all, probably because she's 15. They made a cool looking underage character but did not sexualize her in any way. It's just an interesting thing that I've noticed and wanted to mention, do with it whatever you want. Another thing real quick before I end this section. The opening song of this game is so good, but so badly mixed with what's happening on the screen. That doesn't matter though, because it's an absolute banger song by Hyde. Now, before I talk about other placements in my top 5, I want to talk about some games I really wanted to play this year but haven't yet. Most of them I bought, so my pile of shame continues to grow. I didn't just have the chance to play them yet. It probably comes to you as no surprise because I love Rune Factory, but I'm super excited to finally play Harvestella. On the same day I bought it, I also finally got Sonic Frontiers. I'm a huge Sonic fan and I can't wait to finally jump back into an adventure with the Blue Hedgehog. I also bought Soul Hackers 2 on release, which might have been stupid because I still haven't played it and it's gotten way cheaper since then. But Atlus at least finally recently released an update to the game with some quality of life changes, so I really need to get to playing it soon. Another game I bought but haven't played yet is AI the Summoning Files Nirvana Initiative, but I haven't even played the first one. I just wanted the cool pop-up parade figurine that was included in the collector's edition. And obviously, as a huge Nier fan, I got the Switch port of Automata, but I haven't played it either. Then there's tons of other games I haven't bought yet, but most definitely want to play. Atelier Sophie 2, the successor to my so far favorite Atelier game. I haven't played any of the Ryza games yet though. For some reason I also haven't bought the new Kirby yet, although I love the pink foofball. The new God of War Ragnarok seems to be really good, but I don't know if I will wait until I have a PS5 to play it or just get the PS4 version eventually. There's also the Crisis Core port, which probably will make me cry a lot once again, but I'm super excited to meet Zack again. I could talk about way more games at this point, but I would probably never be done if I do so let's continue with the top 5. Number 3, Bayonetta 3. It's been so long since we got the announcement for Bayonetta 3 and every day waiting for it was painful. But then we finally got news, trailers, a release date, everything seemed to be looking good for the Witch. Until Helena Taylor came out with her allegations towards Platinum Games. It killed a lot of the hype and I quite frankly wasn't sure if I would even want to still get the game. Simply because I do believe in better rights and better pay for voice actors. But in the end, a lot of the infos she gave didn't add up, and by now we know most of the full story, which showed that what she said wasn't really the truth at all. And honestly, in my personal opinion, for her, it never was about better pay in the industry for voice actors, it was solely about her pride that was hurt for some reason. It just was not a good thing to happen. But in the end, I got the game in the collector's edition, which is gorgeous, and boy did I enjoy this game. The story is amazing, at least in my opinion. The game is full of fresh and creative ideas and every stage makes you wonder, what will happen next? It's a blast. Now I personally am probably in the minority of players that absolutely love Viola, love her playstyle, probably because I played Sekiro too much, and I also enjoyed the ending. I do not like Viola's running sounds though, she sounds like a running dog and it's annoying at times. Bayonetta plays so well, the exploration is fun, and I couldn't find anything to complain about honestly. The game looks fantastic, although yes, some textures are rough, and the Switch certainly is hitting its limit with this game. But honestly, it is impressive what Platinum Games was able to push the Switch to do. Sometimes there's going on so much in the background of the stages, while the active part of Bayonetta fighting, summoning huge demons while fighting hordes of enemies. It's insane how well the game runs. And she's, well, as sexy as ever doing all of this. Except for when you play in naive angel mode. Although in the end the game still isn't something that kids even should play, for very obvious reasons. I feel like Platinum Games included the naive angel mode more as a joke than an actual attempt to make the game more kid-friendly. What really blew me away was how many different weapons the game offers and how probably everyone should be able to find their own playstyle. Except for when you play Viola, then you're basically back to playing Sekiro, where hesitation is defeat. But when you play as Bayonetta, things get wild. I sometimes miss the torture attacks the first two games had though. They are still in the game, yes, but they are less frequent and play a much smaller role, which makes sense though, because things usually happen on a way bigger scale and you can blast enemies away by summoning the big demons. Which, I'm sorry, is so cool! I love me some fights between big monsters and the game makes sure that, especially during boss fights, it becomes a unique experience every time. Little spoiler here, so skip it 10 seconds ahead if you don't want a certain boss fight spoiled. At some point, the game turns a boss fight into a rhythm game after some of the enemy zombies did a little dance choreography. It was such an amazing moment, it left me with tears in my eyes from laughing so hard. It's amazing. It's really creative and just so out of nowhere. It's what makes this game so good for me. it also is not afraid to do some things that you wouldn't expect, just like the ending of the game, which certainly sparked controversy amongst fans. So much that even Hideki Kamiya, the producer and writer for the games, commented on how people would be surprised to see what happens in a potential Bayonetta 4. So yeah, please Kamiya, give me another entry in this fantastic series. And we already know at this point, thanks to the announcement of the Game Awards, that there's going to be a prequel game next March, so that's going to be amazing. One thing I want to mention, I have to come back to the Helena Taylor thing. I actually prefer Jennifer Hale as a Bayonetta. She's kind of more dynamic than Helena Taylor, if that makes sense. But maybe that's also just because of, well, story reasons, obviously. But yeah, that might be after all what happened that maybe I'm just biased. But speaking of being biased, let's talk about number 2, Digimon Survive. I'm almost sure that people will be mad at me putting this over Bayonetta 3. But see, I love Digimon. I loved it since I was a wee little boy running home after school to see the newest episode of the anime. I played Digimon World on PlayStation 1 so much, I wouldn't be surprised if it's my most played game of all time. But the franchise had it rough for a little while, at least in Europe, we didn't get a lot of the games. While the US at least got several games on the Nintendo DS, the series was basically dead for a while over here. After Digimon World 4 was released over here on PS2, it took until Digimon All-Star Rumble for another game to appear here. And it was an awful one. And way back, I even imported Digimon Cyber Sleuth from Japan to at least finally have a good Digimon game again. Thankfully, it was eventually released worldwide, and I feel since then the series has been popping off again. Now, in contrast to Pokemon, Digimon has been aging along with its fans. It's gotten more mature, which is evident in Digimon 3 being a thing and Digimon Ghost Game having some kinda rough moments as well. So it comes as no surprise that the games grow up too, which resulted in Digimon Survive. In this game, which is a mix of visual novel and strategy RPG, you get trapped in another world with some people from your school, and there are dangerous beings, which aren't called Digimon, mind you. The stress that comes from being randomly stuck in another world where dangerous monsters lurk around does get to some of the characters. And it doesn't take too long until one of the students actually succumbs to his madness and dies. There's a pretty gruesome scene later on that left me loudly gasp, because I did not expect this Attack on Titan-like moment in a Digimon game. I'm glad to say that I went down a route in the game where nobody else had to die, but that certainly was a possibility. The game deals with quite a lot of heavy topics: pressure from not being good enough, sickness, abuse, the death of loved ones. But it certainly does a well job at covering those topics, at least in my opinion. The biggest problem I personally have with the game is the fact that you have to play through it twice in order to get the actual good ending and more infos on certain things that the characters have to deal with. Thankfully, in the second playthrough, you keep all your Digimon and their evolutions, so you can just fly through the battles and skip through text you've already read, but I do recommend using a guide to get the best possible route. And no, you cannot get the good ending during your first playthrough, no matter what you do. I have to say though, whenever one of the Digimon, or Kemonogami as they are called in this game, evolved because of story reasons, I was pumped. There was one moment in the final stretches of the game where a certain evolution happened. I literally yelled. It was probably weird for my partner to sit there and watch me get extremely excited about this, but I have to emphasize this again. I love Digimon a lot. So seeing some of my favorite Digimon appear, being able to blast the bosses away with them, it just brings a certain primal feeling within me that I cannot describe other than pure hype and joy. So that's why I ranked this game so high on my top games for this year. It just brought me so much joy. I'm extremely excited for next year because my favorite Digimon World game will finally be ported to the Nintendo Switch after I've been yelling about it for years. Digimon World Next Order, which certainly won't be loved by everyone because of the Tamagotchi-like mechanics, but man did I play the heck out of this back on PS4. Now, you know what time it is. Exactly. It is time to not talk about number 1, because before we do that, it's honorable mentions time. Just some games that I've played this year but either didn't finish or just didn't make the cut for the list. The very first game I've played and finished this year was Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. It probably would have been on top of this list, but it wasn't released in 2022, so it wouldn't have fit into the rules that I myself have made up. I haven't played much of the patches after the game though, I definitely need to do that soon. Endwalker was a phenomenal finale of what the game has been building up to for years. I may have shed a tear or 100. I love it so much. Another game I really enjoyed but sadly didn't finish for some reason is Elden Ring. I played this so much but suddenly stopped back when I had to go to the hospital. As it turns out, playing a difficult game while being in extreme pain isn't much fun, and somehow I just haven't went back since then. It probably would have easily made the list otherwise, but I wanted to only put games on it that I've actually finished. But I will go back and finish it soon. A game that I liked and finished was Solstice. Solstice? I'm not entirely sure, but it did have its problems. I kind of thought at first that this would be kind of like a Souls-like game, solely based on the name of the game, but it was actually a game that tries to compete with games like Devil May Cry. It certainly manages to roughly hit the spot at times, but to compete with the big kings like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, it certainly needs more polish. The jumping sometimes was rough, the enemies were way too tanky, and it did have some technical issues at times, although it does look really good in most of the areas. The story was really interesting and I certainly hope it becomes a series, mainly because the story isn't fully resolved in this game, quite the opposite. Oh, also, if you're a degenerate like me, I'm gonna give you a reason to buy this game. It also features full frontal nudity for the main character, which certainly came as a surprise. I do recommend checking the game out, but keep in mind that it can get frustrating at times and it is a bit rough around the edges. There's other games I've played, like Pokemon Arceus, and since recently Violet, Splatoon 3, Monster Hunter Sunbreak. But the last one I want to mention is Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. The game is actually not that bad. It's pretty rough around the edges, but if you don't take it as seriously as it tries to take itself, you might really enjoy the game. Because the combat system is pretty fun, and in co-op, you can blast enemies away with others. I do think that the endgame crime is not really that fun though, but I certainly gotta check DLC out soon for more. Chaos. Now let's talk about the game that I enjoyed the most this year, my number one. 7 Pirates H. Wait, no, that's just the weird edgy game I played this year. My most favorite game of 2022 is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This game is just so fantastic. It's wild to me how much I love it. The combat system, which combines elements of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 but makes its own thing out of it, is amazing. The world looked gorgeous, the characters I quickly fell in love with, the soundtrack, the story, the choreography in the cutscenes. Literally everything clicks and falls into place perfectly for me. I enjoyed traversing this vast world so much. I enjoyed every battle, and I even used the chain combos basically every time, which made me level up a bit too much at some points in the game. The ending of the game, no spoilers here, don't worry, made me literally cry like a little kid. It's such an emotional journey, and the entire topic of the game really hits close to home for me out of very personal reasons, I guess. I didn't really watch any trailers for the game besides the announcement trailer, so I really didn't know a lot about anything in this game. It's how I usually approach media that I want to consume. I want to know nothing about it, so it can hopefully surprise me with its stuff. And boy, did Xenoblade Chronicles 3 surprise me. The hero system is just so much fun, the entire class system has so much potential that my tiny dumb brain can't even grasp all the fun things you could do with it. I'm sure that people do wild things with it on high difficulty. My plebeian butt plays on normal difficulty though and just likes to enjoy the ride. And I did enjoy the ride a lot. I remember wanting to finish up chapter 5 before I went to bed. And if you played this game, you know that I did not go to bed for a long time after that. Since it is literally a combination of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, it was tons of fun to have all these oh moments, which someone who didn't play the other games won't have. Which doesn't mean that people who didn't play them can't enjoy the third entry in the series. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 walks a very fine line of being its completely own game, while also serving as a wonderful finale for the trilogy. And yes, I know, Xenoblade Chronicles X is a thing, but it is its own story, as far as I can tell as someone who's never finished it. Please, Nintendo, I want to finish it, so bring me a Switch version maybe? Thank you. So right now with Xenoblade, I'm basically waiting for the rest of the DLC to come out. I'm excited to see what the bonus DLC story will be about and how big it will be. If we take a look at how massive the Torna DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was, we might be able to expect something great for the third entry of the series too. Until then, I've at least unlocked the sim suits for everyone. And I gotta say, my girl Yzana looks fantastic in hers. And Rune is, well, still the boss, especially when it comes to physics. I seriously cannot explain just how much I love the characters in this game. Riku and Manana, for example, are such fantastic companions, and every time they're on the screen, the chances of me smiling are super high. The heroes you meet all have such unique personalities, one of them even being non-binary. Heck yeah, Nintendo, you finally arrived in 2022. The enemies are also pretty fun to hate, although there's some developments for one character that didn't leave as much of an impact on me as the writers probably have wanted, simply because there wasn't enough time for me to bond with that character. Some of the enemies' motivation also do make sense, although it obviously doesn't justify their actions. I just really like having enemies with a goal that in theory is relatable and logical. But anyway, the most important character to me was Yzana. After all, she is the girl with the gall.
I'm the girl with the gall.
But yeah, that was my top 5 list of the games I've played in 2022. There's one thing I want to talk about though, the game that disappointed me the most. I thought of making an entire video on it, but I figured it would just fit best to quickly talk about it in this video. Since its announcement, I was extremely excited to finally play Scorn. The game got delayed to make sure they can bring us the best gaming experience possible. And look, if you enjoyed and loved this game, all the power to you. But I was extremely disappointed. The game starts off really interesting and it gets super interesting throughout. But the gameplay was simply just completely annoying at some point for me. While the few puzzles we have aren't difficult at all, and from what I can gather that's possibly for story reasons, the combat in Scorn is annoying and bad, at least for me. For example, you have enemies that can shoot you from afar, while in the beginning you can just poke them a little bit with a poke weapon thingy. I know it's a skill issue when I can't dodge in time and can't get the kill, I absolutely know this. It doesn't make it less annoying though. Then you finally get guns, but your ammunition is extremely limited, so you have to make sure every shot lands, and even then you're sometimes better off just fighting with your little poke thingy. You lose health a lot, and for sometimes story reasons, and regenerating it is a rare thing. That's not fun for me. I get the vision behind it, the developers had it and went with it, that's fine. It just didn't resonate with me personally. And then at the end of the game, there's like this final boss fight, and it's literally the most annoying trial and error thing I've seen in a long time. I did not enjoy it at all. At this point, I was already just completely annoyed by the entire gameplay and wanted all of it to be over soon. Which honestly is a shame, because visually it's really great. The world is super interesting. But what I do not like is that some of the story is only available and understandable to you if you read through the art book. Because there's tons of lore for the game in there, which is a nice bonus if the game itself wouldn't be so cryptic. Look, maybe I'm just a huge idiot, but I really kept wondering while playing, when will I finally learn what the fuck I'm even doing? Then at the end of the game, when it finally gets interesting, you are introduced to an entire new mechanic that could have had so much potential, but all you do is walk forward and the game ends. It was just so disappointing, like most of the game for me. Like I said before, gaming experiences can differ a lot, and you might love the game, its combat, you might have understood the story by just simply playing the game. But that was sadly not the experience me and my partner had. I'm really glad I didn't buy it and was just able to play it thanks to the game being available on Game Pass. Okay, now I'm done ranting. Everyone had their own gaming experiences in 2022, and I would love to hear your own thoughts on what you have played. Which game would rank in the top 5 and what game disappointed you the most? Maybe you were disappointed by a game I love? Please tell me in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like to please the YouTube algorithm god. Maybe even subscribe for more wacky content from yours truly. If you want to know what I'm up to when I'm not making videos, follow me on Twitter while it lasts or TikTok. I'm Gaming Quitte, the most delicious Quitte of them all, and I want to thank you all so much for watching this long ass video. I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye!